Oh, hello there. What are we talking about today? Oh, ideology. Really? That's got to be the best topic ever. You must be so excited. I can only imagine your level of excitement right now. Don't worry. It's okay. I promise. So, here we are, the grand map of topics that we're working through here with all of these whatever PLCs or professional developments, however you're using it. So we're still very much at the top section. We have a lot to talk about. So many more videos are coming with this in mind. Okay. So what color is the sky? We're going to start with that question today. What color is the sky? And of course you're thinking to yourself, really? Uh, Dude, it's blue. What's the problem? If you need evidence, there it is, right? Awesome. Cool. All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming today. I hope you enjoyed this session. Talk to you later. Okay, but what? I'm sorry. What? Sorry, I'm getting something from the producer. What is it? Red? Uh, okay. Sure. Red. I see some red there. That makes sense. Sure. All right. Well, okay. Orange. Yeah, sure. If you see red, then you probably see some orange somewhere. Sure. There you go. All right. The yellow, orange. All right. Seriously now. I mean, come on. Like, fine. Right. Anything else? Purple. No. All right. Yeah. I mean, I see some purple. Okay. I also see some pink. Did you put pink in there? All right. Fine. Black. The sky is black. Really? Oh yes. The sky would be black at nighttime now, wouldn't it? Yeah. That makes sense. Cool. Okay. Yep. Awesome. So what's going on here, right? What color is the sky? The sky is blue. What's the problem? Why? So this term ideology, it's not a term that we do a lot of work around, and even when we do, it tends to be so uh, very superficial that we're really not getting into something that is probably meaningful at that point. The issue, though, is that our society has many problems with ideology, especially right now. Right? I think political divisiveness, just as for instance, is something that is plaguing our society, is it not? So, yeah, there's that. So let's talk about this. This is not a. What color is the sky? The sky is blue. Like that's not something that is a huge problem for our society, right? It's not going to end life on the planet as we know it. But yeah, the question and the answer are probably not really serving us in the best way either. So why is that happening? The sky really is multiple colors, or can be multiple colors, and it's certainly at least blue and black. I mean, it's black depending on where you live on the planet. It's always black half the year, right? Depending. So anyway, why is it that we're skipping out on that? If you ask a kid, a first grader or kindergartner or preschooler, what color is the sky? And they're like, black. You might pause for a second and be like, does this kid need counseling? Like, what do we do now? I don't understand. Anyway, it's the expected answer is blue. Why is the question then, what color is the sky? Because it's implying or it's inferring that there is only one color that the sky even is. So that's just on its face wrong, right? The premise of the question is just wrong. The next part of this is why are we then expecting one answer? Well, the question itself is formed in that way. But how did we even get that far? Why do we form the question that way in our mind to begin with? Right? So in our mind, we have this dominant thought that the skies are predominantly, if not always, blue. So when we ask the question, what color is the sky? We're expecting to hear the word blue, like it's the right answer, right? If a kid says, well, it's blue right now, but nighttime it's dark, and sunrise and sunset can be a lot of different colors and all that, you might be like, well, all right, kid, awesome, right? But your question itself would not have led them down because of the words themselves. They're just not about it being a variety of colors. If you ask the question, what color is the sky now? Or what time of day is the sky black? Or, right, I mean, you get the point here, right? That's because the ideology actually shifts from sky is blue ideology to sky is many different colors depending on the time of day ideology. And you might be thinking, isn't that just fact? Well, yeah, it's fact. But ideology doesn't work in fact unless you're using fact as your ideology. See the point here? The point is we do this thing in our mind where we sort of project out reality in front of us based on what we think is going on. And then we act in accordance with that until we see need to question it, right? Or until we agree with a reason to question it. So our brain is not just, it's not like an observer, it's just sort of this objective observer. Our brain is actually using this sort of preconceived map of the space in front of us, right? And it's very easy for us to miss something if it's not in the map to begin with. Doesn't mean we can't add to it, but if we are really valuing a certain way of having that thinking or map constructed in our head, then it may be really difficult for us to add that piece to the map or change the map entirely if need be. Right? So this sort of reality that we project out in front of us, the eyes are seeing what the mind is telling us to see. Right? So whatever information we're taking in through, well, all of our senses, right? So somebody who doesn't have function of their eyes, they're still getting lots of information through other senses. So the idea here is that the brain is telling us what we're supposed to think about it. Even if we do have some sort of discordant, just simply out of the ordinary, quote unquote, experience, right? So we walk around with a very normed map in our head. And, as teachers, we are one of the greatest perpetuators of social norms. We don't do a lot of questioning of social norms because they might mean that we're not really allowed to be a teacher anymore. Right? It's one of the. I'd like to be able to pay my rent or my mortgage, so it may not be worth dying on this hill right now. But even more so, we also just might not simply be thinking about those things because our map is so, concretized, and we're not really questioning a lot of things. So, as innocuous as this example is, and as sort of benign as it is in our actual lives, it's a good example of how we do our thinking, and then what the expectations are sort of based on that. And if we're going to evaluate somebody, well, we better make sure we're actually asking a question in a way that's really a fair question. So how do we know, right? Because if you ask a kid, what color is the sky? And then they're like black. And then you realize like, oops. Okay. Any reasonable person would be like, oh yeah, it is black sometimes, huh? I don't know why they didn't put down blue, but they're not wrong about that. But you have to sort of go in and reorganize your thinking about why you even ask the question that way. Those are things that teachers have to do all the time, right? And if we do that kind of work, we're actually doing pretty good teaching. But if we don't, then we're just, we're perpetuating what very well could be very damaging things about our reality with kids. So, how does ideology work? Well, it's a very basic idea here. You have a central idea that's valued above all other things, and then secondary, tertiary, and so forth. All of the other ideas are sort of wrapped around that, making sure that the central idea is what's being valued and maintained. Okay? So we have plenty of examples of this in our life. We have this thing called money, for instance. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend some time with you talking about an example that a philosopher named Slavoj Zizek provided in his first publication, his first book. He talks about maybe everything is an ideology. Maybe everything that we think about is an ideology, right? So that's a deeper discussion for another day. Welcome to the philosophy class of Dr. Love. But let me just do this example quickly to show you kind of um, how that might be possible. So if I was to hand you two nickels, right? One that's super shiny and new, you're like, whoa, look at that shiny nickel. And then I give you one that's worn down, sort of, brownish, brownish, grayish color. Uh, and then you look at both of them, okay, yeah, that one's a little scuffed up, sure, right? Okay. Now take those two nickels, go to the store, something's, $10.05. You can hand them either nickel with a $10 bill. Why is that? Right? I mean, one is shiny and it looks awesome, but the other one's sort of scuffed up and old and. So how is that possible? Because if I were to, try to sell my car, it's used, I would not be able to sell it for the same price that I bought it. Why is that? So you see the point here, right? The nickel is just one example of many examples in our lives, um, of something that no matter its condition, the worth of it does not change. Well, that's interesting, right? Because a lot of things definitely, their worth definitely changes as their conditions change. Okay, so he brings this up as to say, so what is it that we're actually doing when we're giving somebody a nickel? Because it could be in any condition. What you're really doing is you're giving them a physical object that represents an idea of something, and it represents the idea of 5 cents, right? 5% of a dollar is what you're giving somebody. So you have to have this physical object, or at least you used to. But now we're in a situation where you don't have to have physical money on you in most cases. In fact, as long as you don't even have to have a bank account that supports the amount of money that something costs, right? You can have a credit card or get a loan with not even your own money, right? That's kind of a weird thing. So let's talk about this for a second, right? Let's go through money as an ideology. A lot of people on the planet did not have this idea for a very, very long time of money. They had an idea of worth of things, and how valuable something was, but value was measured in other ways. So money itself is a social construct. It's built on the idea of worth, but it's also one of the more early versions of it is that it was built on this idea that people shared about a shiny golden rock, right? That the golden rock itself had all of this value to it, and so we started to apply the concept of money to the golden rock itself. Okay, there's not enough golden rocks on the planet to represent the amount of money that we think we have anymore. And there's not even enough dollar bills to represent the actual money that we work with on a daily basis. It's just a small percentage of what's really out there anymore. Um, you see on the right there, the world is awash in more debt than there is money enough in the world to liquidate it. In other words, there's more debt than there is actual money. How is that possible? So money is it's an idea of worth. Okay. If I hand you $100 bill, we're in agreement with each other that um, it is worth $100. Right? It's not worth a dollar. It's not worth $10. It's not right. We're in agreement. That's how much of this is just idea based. Right. If I draw you a picture of $100 bill and give it to you, right, our idea ends there. Uh, we have some strict rules around this idea, but it's an idea nonetheless. So let me play with this idea a bit. Like, imagine you're a person on the planet, and you get visited by this alien. I would love to get visited by this alien. Just to anyway. Um, And this alien says to you, all right, explain to me how things work in your community. Or we're here just to observe and understand more. Okay? And you're like, wow, me? Cool. All right. It's not going to take you very long to get to this idea of money in our society. And if you're explaining how things work, you're definitely going to say the word money at some point in time. So how do you explain that to an alien, right? Well, let's see. So the alien, you have this thing called money. Yes. Okay. How does this work? So let's say I need a good, or a service, goods or services. So let's say I go and I'm having a heart attack. And I need to go to a hospital. I need to be able to have that taken care of. Well, it costs so much money that we have these other systems of sharing money to pay for the money that's needed for my heart attack, so that the doctors and the hospitals and the pharmaceuticals and the medical equipment companies and so forth can all be paid, because I don't really have the money. Well, that's a weird example to start off with, isn't it? Right? Can you start with something simpler like candy? All right, you want some candy? Okay. I want a Snickers bar. I love Snickers bar. So I'm going to go and give you $1, and you're going to give me a Snickers bar. So we're in agreement right there that the actual Snickers bar itself holds the same value as $1 that I just gave to you. It's just an exchange, right? But that's not entirely true, because the people who make Snickers want the dollar more than they want the Snickers, right? So in a weird way, the dollar as the actual dollar, right? The dollar worth that's connected to the dollar is actually worth more than the Snickers dollar, because they want to make the Snickers and get rid of it and get the worth of the dollar that, right? So they're not willing to sort of build up their bank account in Snickers. They want to build it up with money, even though Snickers is worth that dollar. And they could just simply make more Snickers and just hand Snickers out, right? I'm going to go to a store and I'm going to buy a ladder for my house, and it costs 250 Snickers. Here you go. But now, Home Depot, Lowe's, whoever is like, wait a minute, we don't need all those Snickers. Yeah, but they're all worth $1. Here, take them. Yeah, that's not what I'm asking for. Or we want the dollars. Okay, so you want either the physical dollars or some sort of like credit card version of the dollars. That's what you're telling me? So I can't give you $250 worth of Snickers. I have to give you $250 worth of dollars. Right? Isn't that weird? A little bit, kind of. So I think that's because Home Depot and Lowe's actually sell Snickers. In addition to lumber and, ladders and things. So that's kind of weird, right? So we have this, all of this is going on in our head. All of this is going on in our head. Every single day. And we don't even question it. We can't. Who has the time for this? You're a weirdo. If you go in and try to do that. I mean, here's an interesting story that my grandfather and grandmother used to go into big box stores, and they would say, yeah, I want to buy that TV. And the TV would be on sale for, let's say, $700. And they'd be like, well, I'd like to buy it for $550. Will you sell it to me? And of course, the clerk is like, what? Right? And then just go get the manager. Right? And so the manager comes back. They go, we want to buy it for $550. And then the manager's like, okay. Right? There have been times when they've walked into a store, the store says, this is what this is worth, this is what we're going to sell it for. And then my grandparents have ended up buying something for a lot cheaper, not because it was on sale, just because they asked for it to be cheaper. They've gotten no as an answer as well, but they did that. Now, that's messing with the ideology, isn't it? To some degree, that's messing with the ideology. They used to do this in Kmart. They used to do this in, stores that aren't around anymore, like Cowdoor, Bradley's, stuff like that. That used to be in the Northeast. Anyway, the point being is that they changed the value just with words of, we want to give you this worth. Are you willing to accept that? And they can say no to it, right? And they walk away. But they did. And in some cases, they did. And I was just astounded when I heard that, because in my head, as a kid, I'd hear that story and be like, I've never heard of anybody doing that, right? So this thing of money is at such a level of idea in our head. But think about all the ways in which that we go around trying to operate with just the idea of it. It's a social construct, which is to say made up, which is to say fake. It's only real in the sense that we make it real, but it's complete. It's a fake thing. We can all just go, oh, this is fake. Bye, right? Um, it's a really weird thing. I'm bringing this up because that's how ideologies work. Ideologies work based on this agreement that we have with each other, right? The moment that we sort of break that agreement, the ideology has a potential to shift and become something else entirely. The way in which the ideas are organized, the way in which we practice, all of this, so much more. So, anyway, the thing about money also is that it provides, um, because it's fake, it's a social construct, it's made up. I mean, again, it's not fake, and it's only fake in the sense that we make it up, but because we make it up, it's real to us. Um, but the things that we actually need, the real things, like, I don't know, clean atmosphere, we need to be able to buy food, right? Um, Nearly everything in life, in a significant way, goes back to the need for money. Okay, um, just we could look at an idea, a different kind of idea, and be like, well, everything goes back to toothpaste at some point in time. Okay, fine, but not in a significant way, right? Not in a way in which that toothpaste is the centerpiece that makes us all think and act and and do things because of toothpaste. We do nearly everything in life on some level because of money. Uh, I wouldn't say everything. I'm sure there's some exceptions, but you get the point. Now, clearly, the alien's going to have a response to that. So something along these lines, right? Fear leads to anger. Yes, I'm doing this. I am doing this. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. Okay, you're welcome. You're welcome for that. Money is something that creates quite a bit of suffering on the planet. How many people have died because of this idea, right? How does this idea create more fear in our lives? How does it create desperation, extremism, fundamentalism? How does it contribute to things like war, right? It's yeah, it's a lot. And when you think about it as being something so completely made up, it's got to take your breath away. Because I don't know if there's anything else that we've made up that has this level of damage. And it's something that we wake up to and use every single day without question. We just end up doing it, right? What choice do we have, even? So that's a pretty entrenched, pretty concretized ideology. And as I said, it has lots and lots of implications in terms of how some of the most important things in our lives get done. And so much more. Call now. So, what happens when we look at the money ideology or the greed ideology? Because money, in many ways, is tied to a greed uh, desire. Which, okay, I know, another discussion for another day for sure. Not every person who has money is greedy. I understand that. But if the idea here is to tie everything to money, then how is education tied to money as well, right? And to what extent does it become us teaching about greed in an uncritical way, right? So I sort of broke down education into three major categories here: the role of schools and communities, the classroom and school, culture and climate, and then the pedagogy itself. So let me walk through this a bit, and remember that everything I'm going to say, so I don't have to keep saying it, is this is how education looks with money ideology. Okay, so sites for training students as pre-employees and proud docilitarians. What I mean by that is the schools themselves are not really schools for learning. In this case, they're really schools for training people who are going to become somebody else's employee down the road. And to become that kind of employee, you got to be docile. You can't go around trying to upend the apple cart too much, or the apple cart's going to fire you, but right. So you're a pre-employee as a K to 12 student, you know, or maybe someday you turn 16 and go work for a convenience store. You're not really a pre-employee anymore, but you get the idea. So that status is not student really. That status is just you're somebody else's future employee. And that's something that we're supposed to be feeling good about. We're supposed to be focused on that. We're supposed to be making sure that we're really tightly, aiming for that goal. If you look at the U.S. Department of Education's mission statement, it says global competition is the single reason for education. The mission statement itself, that's what it says for all of U.S. schools. Global competition. I kid you not. Okay, and that mission statement, has been around for at least 2 administrations now, Republican and Democrat. So, it's a mission. It's just a mission statement, but it's a mission statement, right? It's supposed to be a very intentionally constructed sentence that does more than just that. Okay, so if that'll change, who knows, right? Maybe it will. But for now. So proud docilitarians just mean that you're a proud, docile person, right? You're proud of the job. You're proud of your employee status, right? Your consumerist employee status, really. So proud docilitarians. Role of schools and communities. Affluence and egocentrism as social justice. So moving from poverty to affluence, that's social justice. Right? We talked about this, right? I talked about this in the last session, right? And then, of course, you have to have a bit of an inflated egocentrism in order to think this way in the first place. So there's a level of egocentrism here that's actually preferred, because you got to do you so that you can succeed and compete and outcompete others and blah, 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 blah. Okay, classroom and school, culture, and climate. Relationships of control with students. It probably goes without saying. At risk. Well, what are kids really at risk of? When we say at-risk students, which is a terrible phrase, by the way, there's no way that we should be talking about kids in this way. I mean, you might as well be, cursing at them. At risk is a very deficit-minded view of students. What are they at risk of, right? At risk of not becoming capitalist participants? At risk of seeing the school for being so disingenuous in terms of what it says that it's doing and what it's really doing? What is it that they're at risk of? Because they're right to critically question what's going on with education right now. They're going through hell, to be honest, right? And it doesn't mean that everybody who goes through hell makes all the right decisions either, but they're going through hell. So at risk of what exactly? Emotions as well, that just escaped me. Impediments. Oh my god. Yep, it's been that day. I need my lunch. Where's my lunch? Emotions as impediments to learning. So let's do that part first. Emotions are something that right now we are trying to control for if we're not careful, especially in a money ideology. It's about really controlling kids emotionally so that they can learn, right? Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully that's not the way that you're really thinking about it, but something to question. And I'm not, oh, by the way, I'm not saying that everybody is teaching this way, right? All these things that I'm saying here, again, one more time, fall into the ideology of money that would then make these the outcomes for education. So just to be clear, right? And then emotions also being used very superficially to sort of draw kids in, fish kids in to a topic and be like, oh, look, see, you have an interest in this. Ha ha ha. societal success as economic affluence. Right, ready? So that becomes interesting as a culture and climate issue because it's something that's very talked about or hinted at over and over and over and over. Right, so that becomes your culture and climate. Contributions is so. What are contributions? Contributions, again, sort of at the climate level, are these. It's just the way in which you participate in capitalism, right? How capitalist labor is sort of sprinkled with feel-good narratives of individuality. Isn't that lovely? Oh, so good. Where's junior achievement when you need it? Uh, sorry. Well, not really. Uh, I do have a problem with those sort of things at all. My kids are sort of forced fed junior achievement at their school at the elementary level, and it makes me puke on a regular basis. And you see this, sir. Capitalist labor is sprinkled with feel good narratives of individuality, and it's not just junior achievement doing it, right? It's one of the ways in which we end up framing our curriculum so that we can keep drawing kids in. All right. Students as docile right answer givers, so our high flyers and our honor students, they excel because of the way that they can give right answers, which tells you something about the education overall. Again, the climate and the culture, if that's what it means to be a high flyer in that school, it's one, it's competitive, right? Two, it's saying that education itself stops at the right answer, which is a very superficial way to teach anybody anything. And of course, a money ideology would make sure that you're doing that because you need somebody to do. I mean, this is coming from Taylorism. This is coming from Fordism. If you really want to look at this stuff in a more sort of historical way, where does this come from? Taylorism and Fordism were all about trying to get workers to be robotic levels of efficiency. And so schools themselves, they created behaviorism. Behaviorism is exactly out of a money ideology, right? So right answers, right behaviors, right emotions, right everything. Okay, something we have to be really, really, really careful about right now. We'll talk about all that stuff at some other point in time. Okay, it's coming. So the pedagogy itself, selection of topics in contexts that are related to those sort of feel-good individual labor and consumerism, right? How many math problems can we throw at kids that's about how much money something is, or how much it costs, or how much more money they need, or how much more money Susie has, and oh my God, right? What kid in the third grade has to deal with money in a direct way other than living in poverty and dealing with it that way, right? But I mean, in terms of handing over money, counting out money, and being like, this is what I want so I can get a bag of marbles or something, I don't know. That is profound. Why are we injecting that into an eighth grader's head right then and there? They can do simple math. Does it always have to be a money situation, though? Why is that the context for so many math problems? Because all you're teaching them is consumerism, and all you're teaching them is the importance of adhering to this very problematic economy, right? All right, real world issues limited to superficiality and disengagement. Sure, we'll talk about a real world issue. Martin Luther King Jr., what an amazing person. Guess what? He had a dream. Let's talk about the dream that he had. Oh, right. There we go. Right? It's a complete disconnect from the larger arguments and the ways in which he and many others were critically trying to shape society at that time and still are today. Right? Oh, if I have to hear somebody talk about Martin Luther King's dream speech one more time, I'm just like it's. I feel for the guy. I feel for the family. It's a beautiful speech, but it has been co-opted and manipulated in such ways that it's very destructive. The ways in which we do this kind of stuff, right? It undermines the entire meaning of what it's even about. Curriculum reorganized for the 21st century workers. Yes. So there's a lot around that, of course, and there has been for a while. The idea is to get kids into technology and let's have them be part of that larger global competition. Ah, God bless America. All right, content of right answers. I already mentioned this one. So content is just really just right answers. That's all it is, just a long list of right answers. Learning ends at the right answer. Mentioned that one before as well. Learning outcomes tied to standards-based testing. Jeez, really? Oh, that's a problem? Okay. Closed-ended right answers, only assessment. So you see how it's like driven by right answer, right answer, right answer, right answer. And even if it's a science, process, right? Everybody has to do inquiry the same exact way, that kind of stuff, right? So even when it's process oriented, it's still right answer process oriented, and very closed ended. It's not. There's very little that we do that's genuinely open ended. And then grades seen as accomplishments. All right, another social construct, right there. Grades. And that those are seen as an accomplishment themselves. Those are not real accomplishments. The way in which we contribute, the kind of person we are, and all that, those are actual accomplishments. But getting an A, not so much a real accomplishment. Now, some would say, I worked really hard for that. What are you talking about? Of course, it's an accomplishment. Yes, what you've actually learned is the accomplishment. The depth of understanding it is the accomplishment. The grade itself is completely fake and issued by some other person with, I don't even know what does it mean? What does it really mean? Okay, so there's that side of things, for how money ideology influences schools. Really problematic stuff, right? Now, what if thriving was the central idea? What if that was the ideology that was influencing schools in the secondary, tertiary, and all the different levels? What would that look like? So, roles in schools and communities, sites for growing students into critical, democratically literate contributors, people who are going to contribute to their communities. They're going to have a critical eye on what's going on, what the shortcomings are, where the shortcomings are coming from, and how we could work democratically to change things, to make them more thriving. Collective thriving is the social justice, not the becoming an affluent person. Affluence itself would obviously be seen as something that really takes away from society, right? And I'm sure, if you had to explain this to Yoda, Yoda would be like, seriously, why money? Why? You see all the damage it's doing, right? At some point, we do have to have that conversation with each other. I know it's really kind of crazy to even bring it up right now. I get that. But as an existentialist who thinks about these things, it's up to us to collectively have a discussion around what is actually working as part of our society and where do we want to go with it. Maybe we do want to keep it. I don't know. But worth the conversation. Classroom and school culture and climate. So relationships of empowerment with our students, not control. At risk. I would still wouldn't use that phrase, but you get the idea here. At risk of what? Being docile and complacent adults. that's a real risk, right? Yeah, that would be anti-thriving for sure. We don't have any of those in our society, right? We don't have any docile and complacent adults, do we? Emotions as signposts connected to experiences. So we value the emotions, even if they're intense. Of course, you're human. Of course, you're going to have intense emotions, right? And maybe as a person, you're much more tied to and much more expressively emotional. Okay, right? But doesn't mean we can't change or grow or whatever. But emotions help us. They help us figure out, is this tied to something that's good? Is it tied to something that's bad? What should I do? I'm not sure. They're not valueless things in our life. We need them, and we need to understand them more. Not try to do away with them or control them. Okay, societal successes as collective well-being and socio-eco sustainability being improved upon. So our success is we keep improving upon those things. We improve upon well-being. We improve upon our social sustainability. We improve upon our ecological sustainability, and we improve upon the things that are interconnecting them. That's seen as social success, right? Societal success, in the context of thriving. It is, at least. Contributions as critical democratic participants aiming for collective thriving and socio-eco sustainability. and students as critical examiners of community and contributors towards thriving. So our high flyers, in this case, are people who are really doing a job of thinking about their individual well-being, how it's tied to the greater community, how they can help the greater community. All that. That's success, right? That's wonderful. Let's focus on contribution-oriented education as opposed to this sort of money job based education. Now, it may very well be that you become you do have a job. Well, jobs itself, if the professional world or the just sort of work in general was using a thriving based ideology, jobs themselves would be oriented towards contribution, not just the making of money and making somebody rich while the rest of us have to keep giving over our money. All right, pedagogy. So the selection of topics and contexts are related to building community, making it thriving, and the professions are engaged in creating thriving. So even when we talk about professions, this is not about not talking about professions. It actually is about talking about it in a way that they're operating with thriving as their primary goal. I guess that would make most sense to me, right? Um, Real world issues connected to challenges, barriers, and successes with collective thriving and sustainability in mind, right? So when we talk about real world issues in class, which we would do often, they would be connected to challenges and barriers and successes that we have in terms of working with these issues of thriving. The curriculum would be reorganized towards creating people who can support community change towards thriving, right? Something I've been talking about all along. Learning outcomes are aimed at authentic contribution, authentic open-ended assessments, right? So, learning is not ending with a set of right answers. Does it mean that we just don't have right answers anymore? No, of course we have right answers. But that's not the point of learning. The point of learning is to understand the basic content so now you can do something empowering with that content. So yeah, you're still going to have to know how many. I was a science teacher, so you're still going to have to know how many chambers there are in the mammalian heart, right? But maybe you want to do, some work around heart attack awareness based on genders. With that, okay. Knowing full well that the history of heart attack research was very patriarchal, androcentric to say the least, it was focused on men, which is why women's symptoms were just ignored. And lots of women died from heart attacks because they were misdiagnosed, because the original heart attack research was focused exclusively on men and their symptoms, not even looking at women, which was ideologically constructed, right? So that's really important information. And so as somebody who is studying the heart itself, it wouldn't just be about the chambers of the heart and how heart attacks work and, all of that. It would be also what goes on in our society and why is it meaningful to even know the construction of the heart? Well, what are the issues around the heart right now? Well, that's one of them. The way in which gender has been and continues to be this issue, right? So you see that there. It's huge. It's not about a set of right answers anymore, but of course, we're still trying to use very accurate right answers to do the kind of work that we're going to end up doing, which is authentic, empowering, community based. It's based on community needs as well. Right. Last but not least, high quality contributions as the accomplishments themselves. So the grade, not so much. Like who really cares about a grade? Because it really comes down to what kind of contributions are you making as a person, right? And for some kids, just like anything else in our life, some are going to develop at different rates with this, slower, quicker, and that's okay, right? But we can see where they are qualitatively. We can see where they are with that kind of process, right? Maybe it's not until something much later in life that they figure out. Okay, fine, but are they working on it? And how are they working on it? What do we know about what they're working on? What do they understand about all of that? Great, we can do that. So here's the prompts for discussion, should you choose to do so. First one is, what are your initial responses to this session in general? This is only the third real session, fourth if you include the introduction. We're starting to get into a much more dense place of thinking. So there's a lot here to consider. So what are your initial responses to this session? Second, to what extent do you think that an ideology of money is steering mainstream public education? What examples can you point to? Third, to what extent do you think that an ideology of thriving is steering mainstream public education? What examples can you point to? So here's the activities. Again, you see the pathway there, the folder, subfolder, and file name for the shared document that hopefully you have within your groups. And so anyway, in addition to, so this one has been staying the same for all of the sessions pretty much. In addition to the brief discussions, basically record down the patterns, right? So have your discussions with the prompts, and then record the general ideas of the things that are popping up for you all as a group. And then two, this one is different than what you've seen before. So in a small group, 3 to 4 people, choose one topic from any content area and discuss how it might be steered by an ideology of money or greed. And then with the same topic, do it for an ideology of thriving. Just one topic. Okay. Now you have plenty of examples, or the framework is already kind of there, right? I did, in lots of ways, sort of jump forward to the last session of this Issues of Thriving is going to be on the theory of thriving. So I'm already giving you sort of the theory of thriving as applied to education right here in this session. Okay, and we still have a ways to go before we can get there. Because of that, there's a real need to do that deep thinking about these things really before we start to enact them. Okay. Anyway, stay with me. But I've already given you a lot, so all you gotta do is go back to this slide, and you could go back to this slide. So take any topic of any content area, see how it's influenced by the ideology of money. How do we teach it? How would somebody, maybe not you, hopefully not you, teach it with this ideology driving it? And then how would the same topic be taught, and taught very differently, with this in mind? Okay, so there you go. That is it, and I shall see you in the next session. Hopefully you have good discussions around this. Take care.